Welcome back to the Quiet on Set podcast powered by Cineman. I'm Ewan Gruff, and as always, I'm joined by Lachlan Teely.
On episode 148, we'll give you the weekly strike update happening in the industry, and Ewan and I will discuss what's going to be the next big franchise.
Yes, I watched something big this week. I watched The Meg 2, Big Sharks in there, multiple actually. Then I watched two movies about Steve Jobs and the controversial Sound of Freedom, among other things. And Lachlan, I actually don't know what you were up to, so we'll have to wait until you tell us.
Yes, this week though, we are covering one movie in particular, and all I gotta say is video game go brr.
He does go brr.
Now
real
we
fast.
are, yeah, he does go brr. We are discussing Gran Turismo based on a true story.
It is based on a true story. I love that. So let's cue up the intro and get into the show. We are professionals.
This is a professional podcast.
Yes. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Hello there. Which actually,
Did you
this
get
is gonna
me a
be
hat
a
as
bit,
well?
Yes.
So I've got Dooncam. It's just a camera with my Dune steelbook.
All right, welcome back, Lachlan. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I'm good. A
Yeah.
little bit tired. A bit
Yeah.
of a later recording today since we've done a little thing beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It involves Jeopardy, a Jeopardy board, and potentially hot sauce that
Hot sauce.
either one of us took in. You can leave your guesses. Ingested, exactly. Who was that off the base of I guess this recording, or check out the video yourself. It was a really fun one, something different that we tried out. Let us know what you thought of it. But we're coming off of that recording, and there's a couple of news items that I want to briefly talk about. There was one new trailer out this week. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. Fair play. Looked kind of intriguing. It's going to be on Netflix. Had a buzzing Sundance premiere earlier this year, and I guess Alden Reich, Alden Reich, or what his name is? I don't know. From Oppenheimer, you saw him in Oppenheimer and in Cocaine Bear. Is in this one, and it has me quite intrigued. I'm looking forward to this. Lachlan, do you have any thoughts on the trailer?
It does start off like it's just another 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
No, it's a 50 Shades of Grey in the workplace. Sold,
yeah. I think a lot of people have been describing it as like a erotic thriller, and I've seen from the people who've seen it a bunch of pushback to not use that kind of phrasing to describe it. Apparently it's more like an actual thriller type of story, less on the erotic side, but we'll watch regardless. I think we are still intrigued. Then there is an update on the strike. I think the WGA is like about to meet or just met again with the studio heads, but I think there's no like end in sight just yet. But this actually comes from the other side of the industry, where the VFX artists at Marvel, specifically the ones that work on set, not the ones that work in post, but actually on set, are voting to unionize with the IATSE, the conglomerate of all the different branches that are on set that aren't really as big as like the cinematographers. It's like all the grips and the PAs and all of that, like the technicians and all of that. They are in a branch, and they are looking to vote to unionize, and I think they accepted it already, and they are planning to and join that group. So there's actually a great video that Dan Murrell did on this subject. I'm gonna link it below as reference. But yeah, I hope this goes through, and hopefully like the VFX branch as a whole is getting some fairer deals in the foreseeable future. Specifically, here it is also just concerning Marvel. For some weird reason, it's only the Marvel branch, not even, I think, Disney. It's just Marvel. Then another effect of the strike is that the Emmys are postponed to January 15th of 2024. Usually, I think they take place in September, around September-ish. I feel like this makes more sense to kind of put them all together in like 1 2 to 3 month long span. Otherwise, you got like awards all year round, and it's not the most interesting time of the year, if I'm being like for me at least. Well, Lachlan, Will you check out the Emmys now that they are airing in maybe a later time of the year?
No, unless you tell me to.
I won't. And then on some sad news, William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, among other classics, has passed away at age 87. His final film will premiere at the Venice Film Festival, and actually guest appearance in that other video that we just recorded. Kevin is going to join me there to cover the Kane Mutiny court martial. Looking forward to that film, and I kind of did a bit of a retrospective and caught up with some of his films that I hadn't seen. So we'll talk about that a bit later in the show. Lachlan, that's the news. Let's get to the discussion time topic of the week.
Discussion time.
Discussion time. This
Discussion
week,
time.
we are talking about franchises. And more specifically, do we think there's going to be another new big franchise similar in size to Star Wars, the MCU, or maybe just even Avatar? Lachlan, what do you think?
That's a big question. Big question. Because those are some big properties, big IPs. Depends. It's gonna take some time though. I mean, Star Wars is like 50 years old.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Probably the biggest out of all of those, which is the most recent, would be Avatar.
Yeah.
And I say that because Marvel Comics have been around for a damn long time.
Mm-hmm.
So out of all of those, Avatar would be the most recent big franchise.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of other films recently that are expanding similar to Avatar. And the only thing that I can think of is John Wick.
John Wick. Okay. On that size as well?
So the reason I say that is they obviously have done 4 John Wicks, and they might do a 5th. That's up to them. But they have a spin-off already as a movie, Ballerina, with Ana de Armas. And they've also got a TV show coming at the Continental.
Yeah.
So that's 2 spin-offs, right? And all of those films have been fairly successful. So whether it's as big as those, I don't know, but I think that might be the next big franchise, because that's a franchise there.
Mhm.
That's going to be 4 films in the main story and 2 separate spin-offs. The only other things we can think of would be horror films, but I feel like the horror era is slightly over. We don't really get buzz about horror spin-offs anymore.
Well, I also think that they could never reach as big as mainstream appeal. And the reason I picked these 3 is because all of them are like, were at one point in the top 3 highest grossing films of all time, right? A movie from each of these franchises. And I think that, I don't know if John Wick could get up there. So it's like, I was also more thinking, is there anything new that could get up there? Because like even Fast and Furious didn't manage to get all the way up there. The last big one that kind of frizzled out as well was like Harry Potter. Indiana Jones, back when it came out, was like one of the highest grossing of the year, but that also has kind of frizzled out, and with the MCU and Star Wars in decline, the only one that is kind of looking at the upcoming 4th Avatar film at the burning blue horizon, it is Avatar, right? That is still kind of James Cameron at the helm of it all, still steering the ship into a profitable and really big franchise direction. So I don't know. Mattel is definitely not gonna be it. There's not gonna be like a Barbie universe or whatever that like it was I think that's gonna be a one-hit success. They're gonna have a bunch of just like mid successes, and they might have like another big one, probably not on similar size as Barbie, but I don't know, like in what genre do you think we are steering towards? Because I don't think it's gonna be like as superhero heavy as it has been. I feel like we are in for some kind of change, that it is more based, maybe something on toys, maybe something even more akin to video games that has a really mainstream wide appeal.
I'm hoping for a fantasy resurgence.
Yeah, like a Lord of the Rings
I feel like
thing.
the last biggest fantasy we had was Lord of the Rings, and Rings of Power unfortunately did fall on its feet and didn't end up being anything spectacular, but I do know that they're planning on making some more movies, which would be exciting.
Yeah.
So, and also, I know we don't have Lord of the Rings in there, but I don't think we can count Lord of the Rings as big of a franchise in terms of numbers. But in terms of belovedness, it holds up. it really does hold up. Even with the Hobbit films, most people who consider big films will often have Lord of the Rings up there.
Yeah.
If they were to get Peter Jackson back to do another trilogy of Lord of the Rings films,
Mhm.
I'll tell you what, I reckon those would be fairly successful.
Yeah, I think they would still do like quite well. But I don't know if they
Because
would.
people
Yeah.
love the Game of Thrones, and House of Dragon has itched that scratch. Scratched that itch, I should say,
Mhm.
with that fantasy genre. And
Yeah.
people were wanting, because they were wanting a great fantasy show or movie, because Lord of the Rings and House of Dragon came out at the same time, and people were like, which one's going to be the better one? And obviously one was better than the other, but I
Yeah.
feel like people really want that classic fantasy, and the demand for it is there, especially with the recent release, if we bring it into video games, of like Baldur's Gate 3. Like,
Mhm.
the success of this video game has been massive. So
Oh yeah.
there is definitely a genre of fantasy and maybe the success isn't for that game is necessarily the setting. It could be more the fact that it's a classic game getting a sequel, and everyone's raving about it, and it's one of the highest rated games of the year, possibly going to overtake Legend of Zelda as like the game of the year.
Mhm.
But I think the fantasy genre could make its way back into our lives and have another massive franchise based around it.
Yeah, I feel like Nintendo would also, like, if they were to make actual like good movies. I think Super Mario Bros. Movies is like those animated films. They tend to do well, especially because there's also a younger crowd that goes with it. I feel like Pixar is also skewing younger audiences, obviously, but they've kind of conditioned their viewers more towards like Disney Plus, so it's kind of lessened the value of that brand in a way. And I don't know if animated films, if there's gonna be like a franchise that could ever live up to be this big. I think Pixar was at a point like one of those non-franchise, just studio things that every like movie did super well. They kind of lost that as well. So I don't know if like maybe in animated we're gonna see that more. I don't think we're gonna see something from outside of the Western space take up like as big a franchise thing. Like, for example, Demon Slayer is incredibly huge in Japan. I don't think it's gonna bridge over to have like a worldwide impact on that size. But yeah, it's hard to predict. I don't know. I think it's gonna come from gaming though. I don't think we're gonna have another wave of superhero films. I think the next upcoming thing is gonna be video games.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to bring up is we haven't had like you know what, now I think of it, Dune. Like, I was gonna say it like a sci-fi epic, because it used to just be like
Yeah,
the
Star
Star Wars
Wars.
Star Trek debate, but now you can kind of throw the Dune in there once they get
The third one.
sequel out, and if they
Yeah.
get a third one out, that would be interesting, and then spin off in the Dune universe. I could definitely see Dune being the current generation of like Star Wars movies for them, because of
Yeah.
how epic it is in scale. But I don't think that at this point in time we have an epic of our, like, I don't want to say the Marvel movies are the movies of this generation, but they end up
They kind of are.
being that. They
Yeah.
kind of are.
Mhm.
But there are so many other films that have probably missed the success, unfortunately, just due to the fact that MCU has taken up the majority of the screen for the past decade.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I guess, conditioned moviegoers in a sense to seek out that type of film just because it's been so consistent. You are seeking that consistency in the big blockbusters, and it's like it definitely added to less variety in there because the safety was you fall back on these superhero continued stories. And we've pretty much seen every other franchise struggle to have that, like, unless it's like a sequel and it's part of a trilogy or something, they've struggled to have like a connected universe. And there's not a ton that have tried that. Like, there's the Monsterverse that failed, and then there's I guess DC, who's I guess the loudest and the biggest competitor in in the space. But I think gaming is still on the rise. So today it's not gonna be Gran
The
Turismo.
adaptation.
Yeah, maybe it goes beyond that, where like something that is taken loosely from the game and then developed further into a movie franchise actually then gets looped back to a game. I think once we have hit that point, then movies about video games are actually here to stay. And that they might be the more dominant force. But I don't know how much gamers are actually interested in seeing movies, because we discussed this I think last week, where like you mentioned one of your friends who's more into gaming and paying attention to gaming, and uses movies just as entertainment and can just like put it on in the background, and you the other way around. I think that's the case for a lot of like gamers that don't really see the movie space as their main entertainment thing. And I don't know if there's like a bunch of space for transitioning that. But yeah, that's all I have to say in discussion time about this topic.
I like to agree with you on this one. I think video games, I can see it. If Gran Turismo is a sign of how they're going to be adapted, and it's not going to be just a copy and paste adaptation, which we've had in the past. We've had bad video game adaptations, and I think the industry is learning what to do to bring them to the big screen. So, yeah, you know what? I could definitely see that there could be a big video game franchise.
Just look at Street Fighter and to
adapted
continue.
into-
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just look at Street Fighter and the continued success of like Talk to Me, that's been doing like really good numbers for a horror film, even for A24 standards. They have already greenlit a sequel to Talk to Me, really good. And they're also doing the Street Fighter movie, right? And I think if you get like, because Marvel did that right, they got like these indie directors like Taika to do a good like his last one was shit, but like for Ragnarok arguably is one of the best Marvel films, right? And if you get that same sort of appeal for a video game film that has a bit of spice, a bit of actual character, then yeah, I think that they're definitely gonna be the dominating force at the box office in a couple of years.
Agreed.
So that's it with discussion time. So let's talk about what we've been watching. What have you been up to? What have you done this week?
Nothing.
No, what do you mean nothing? Like you were just
Nothing.
laying in bed, going to work, coming straight back, didn't do anything? Doesn't
Yep.
sound too bad of a week. Right?
No, it's pretty bad. It's pretty
Yeah?
bad.
Bad? You don't like it?
Yeah.
I mean, you watched Gran Turismo.
That's the only thing I watched.
Yeah.
Yep, that's my week. I work
Busy with work.
and sleep.
Yeah. Fair. I mean,
Unfortunately,
yeah. Did you get enough sleep at least? Did you sleep like 8 hours?
no. No.
Didn't even sleep. Didn't even sleep
No.
right. But no.
What did I do? I got photos back.
Oh, okay.
That helps.
Yeah. No, that's
I can
interesting.
send you some that you can post.
Oh yeah, your film camera. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'll show you some photos that came out on that one.
Yeah, that's nice. Well,
There's my week. That's the only. Yay!
I overcompensated.
And I went to the museum.
Oh, you went. Oh, okay. That's great. Like cultured.
There you go.
He's cultured.
I went to the museum,
Mhm.
and there was an ancient Egypt exhibit on,
Mm.
and went and saw Mummies. It made me want to watch the Mummy franchise, and I think in my head, because we were doing like an audio walkthrough of it, I like kept being like, it belongs in a museum. So yeah, that's my week.
All right, that's great. Yeah, I watched a whole bunch of stuff. Too much to actually cover in what we've been watching. So there's gonna be another bonus video linked below where I talk about the second season of Heartstopper and How I Met Your Father, as well as High School Musical, the series, season 4, the final season. I did binge that. Just like. Yeah, I'll tell you more in a bonus video. Also watch the new Amazon Prime streaming film Red, White, and Royal Blue. and John Hamm in Corner Office. A couple of weeks ago, we were discussing if we should cover the Meg 2, The Trench, on the podcast. We ultimately decided against it because the reviews were really bad. And I can see why, because this movie is not great. Lachlan, I think you can definitely skip out on it. It doesn't really feature, although there's the triple amount of Megs in this film. They're not really a part of the movie. It's again just like infighting with the humans. And it's really a dumb movie. So stay clear of that one. I watched the two Jobs movie because last week we talked about BlackBerry, and I was in the mood to watch a shitty innovator. There's this one with Ashton Kutcher that's more like a biopic. That one's really bad. And then the Steve Jobs one is actually quite interesting, by Danny Boyle, because it takes place before like a big speech, right? Each time, and there's 3 big speeches that are like a couple of years apart, and it actually is a really interesting way of depicting his life. I like that they just focus on the relationship with his daughter in that one quite a bit, and a great Michael Fassbender performance. Lachlan, have you seen the Steve Jobs, Danny Boyle movie, or have you seen neither of them?
I have seen both.
Wait, you've seen both?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about them? So you have something to talk about?
About the Jobs movies. I haven't seen them in like a while, but
yeah.
Which one's which again? Jobs is the
Ashton Kutcher.
Fassbender one, right?
Jobs.
Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah. Steve Jobs is the Fassbender one.
Steve Jobs is Fassbender, which is the one I prefer.
Yeah, obviously it's a way better film. So speaking of video game related content, I watched the first season of Twisted Metal. Now I distinctly remember like playing this game, I think on the PS2 or PS3 at some point. Like, have you played the game yourself as well?
No, I don't remember about it. No, I don't.
Yeah, I just remember being the clown in that like iconic clown car, and he's also a character in the series, and I think it's like really great background entertainment. Not to pay attention to too closely, because it's really silly, but it is kind of fun. It could have been so much worse, and it definitely leans full into like this world, and it's fine. It could have been so much worse. I actually kind of enjoyed that. And then there was a Hijack with Idris Elba on a hijacked plane, I think 7-episode miniseries that I think takes place over 1 hour at a time. I think it's a thrilling story of this hijacked plane that he tries to navigate his way through. He is not like an action hero in this. He's a negotiator. So that's kind of what he does. He does a lot of stuff just like with, I guess, talking to people. And somehow it's really thrilling still. It just goes a bit big in like the conspiracies it's a part of. It gets a bit too big towards the end for me, but still really enjoyable. That's streaming on Apple TV Plus. And then on Netflix, big boo for Netflix, because they are the ones, one of the main players still holding up the strikes right now, is Heart of Stone with Gal Gadot. It's basically your dollar store version of the Mission Impossible franchise. It has like a bunch of similar looking, although all CGI-ish looking stunts that they do in Mission Impossible. And it's just really bad. I don't know why Jamie Dornan, who's also in this, keeps getting dragged into these really bad movies. But it's just bad. It's just bad. Skip this out. It's gonna be like in a week they're gonna report, because they don't actually put up the real numbers. They're gonna say, oh, this is like top 3 most successful Netflix movie of all time. You guys all watched it for sure, and there's no need for us to show you how many people actually watched it. But that's going to be the story in 2 weeks. And then finally, I watched A Sound of Freedom, the controversial film that was made by, I guess, a group that's more like right-leaning in the States. And I haven't really looked too much into it, but essentially it is about child trafficking. And yeah, it's about a guy who's also like politically active. and apparently he's a controversial figure because he is, I think, part of the reason, or like one of the arguments that like Trump had to say we got to build a wall, because he was also arguing for the case of child trafficking that is happening because the borders are so loose, which isn't really the case, but that was one of the arguing points. I think that's like the overlap and where the criticism comes in. This movie is also not really good. It's like, it's this weird heroic tale of the one guy who saves a bunch of children, which is really easy to root for. It's just not really a well-made movie. It's fine. But yeah, also like not taking the controversy into account. I think it's just kind of okay. And then yeah, William Friedkin, I watched for the first time The Exorcist and The French Connection. Man, those are like two of the best movies of all time. They're so good. Lachlan, I don't know, how familiar are you with Friedkin? What have you seen from his filmography?
Not a lot of his work.
But you've seen The Exorcist, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. I even
Ages ago.
Yeah, even watched that one for the first time. Really had seen nothing. And I'm about halfway through Sorcerer. Gotta boot that up when we finish this recording. Gonna finish that. But The French Connection, really famous for having one of, if not the best chase scene in all of cinema. It's really thrilling. Where he chases the like tram, or like it's crazy. But anyways, that's all I've been watching. Again, the bonus video where I talk about even more stuff below. And let's get to Gran Turismo, Lachlan.
The ultimate wish fulfillment tale of a teenage Gran Turismo player whose gaming skills won him a series of... Okay, this is where we're going to get into an argument, because is it Nissan or is it Nissan?
It's Nissan.
Because I say Nissan.
It's Nissan.
It's Nissan. Got it.
Yeah.
Won him a series of Nissan competition to become an actual professional race car driver.
Ooh, that's thrilling. It comes from Neil
Nissan.
Blomkamp, who's the director behind some movies. Blomkamp, that you might know now. Get into the second argument. How do you say his name?
How do you say his name?
He's the director of District 9, Chappie, and Elysium. Or is it Elysium? I don't know. And yeah, he takes on this Gran Turismo video game adaptation based on a true story. Comes in at a runtime of 135 minutes. Currently is sitting at a 3.3 on Letterboxd, a 7.1 on IMDb, and a 45 on Metacritic. Am I getting this right? That's so low.
I think so, yeah.
Actually quite surprised. The budget, I've seen a bunch of different sources say different things. I think the lowest I saw was like 40 million. It went upwards to also go 100 million as what they were quoting for the budget. And because this movie has been pushed back, at least in wide release in the States, we are still waiting on the box office reports for this one, but it's gonna make a bunch of money. It comes from Columbia Pictures and is one of the few PlayStation production movies that we've gotten so far. The most successful of those so far would have probably been The Last of Us, right? I think they did have a hand in that as well. But they've also made Uncharted, Lachlan's favorite movie of 2021.
No, but yeah.
So, without further ado, we're gonna get into our review for Gran Turismo. Now, we're gonna talk about more general things before we dive specifically into the film, but we'll give you a spoiler warning once we get to spoilers. But before we get there, I think I can say I would recommend this movie if you're interested in the Gran Turismo series. Definitely go check it out. I think it's worthwhile if you love racing films. This is actually a pretty decent one at that. And yeah, I can recommend it overall. But Lachlan, like, you're a gamer. You're a gamer, right?
I've played a game here and there. I've played Tetris.
Very cool. But have you played any racing games or any racing simulators like Gran Turismo?
Yeah. Mario Kart.
Yeah, I think I would say that one would not be a video game. It would be more a sports simulator, right?
Simulator.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh man, I keep all of my bananas.
No, funnily enough, when I was watching this movie, I realized that I am not a big racing sim person.
Right.
I'm not really a big sim person.
sims.
The only one I've ever done is like Microsoft Flight Simulator
Yeah.
and maybe like a space shooter sim, but I've never really
Yeah.
done racing stuff. But I've always wanted to have like the racing wheel and pedals and everything, because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have the gear for it. So
Yeah.
that's why I really haven't done it, because I'd want the wheel, I'd want the pedals. I don't think that like a controller is really going to be. It's not going to give me the same experience that Jeb gets in this movie.
Jan?
Is that his name, Jeb?
No.
Jan, that's it.
I love Jeb more though. It just sounds like a nerdish type of name.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't even really played any racing games myself. That would be more on the side of like a racing sim. I think like the most I've ever played was like the Need for Speed games. I think I played one or two of those.
Yeah.
But they're not as realistic like this is. And then when it comes to simulator games, like I used to grow up with Roller Coaster Tycoon. I don't know how realistic that one is. Like I played the Suit Tycoon games as well. Like SimCity, City Skylines more recently, I think has done actually a really like just for road management. I guess that one's pretty close to reality. You know how they do it. This is not a spoiler, but how they do the transition shots of him racing in the race car or racing at home, and then it transitions into an actual car a bunch of times. You just do that with like a city planner. You're playing City Skylines, and you just like transition into like an office space. I want to see the City Skylines adaptation next, but that's but that's our knowledge when it comes to like racing games. What about racing movies? Because I think this is equal parts video game movie as much it is just a racing movie. So like, you got a favorite there? Have you seen a bunch or only a few?
Not really. I haven't actually seen a lot of racing movies.
Yeah,
because I
me
can't
too.
really think of any like great ones. But yeah, the only two that I can think of would be like a Fast and Furious, or like a more
Yeah.
recent Ford v Ferrari, or even like trying to think what else I've
The Super
I've
Mario
watched.
Bros. Movie sequence when they're in the DK Kingdom.
Yeah,
It's really
exactly.
accurate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I can't really think of anything.
The only other thing that I've seen that is kind of big is Rush. But there's some classics that I haven't seen, and there's also like not that many. There's not that many racing films, you know. There's Senna, there's Le Mans, and there's Grand Prix, and that's about it. There's not too many more. I definitely have those on my watch list. I mean, if you got any more, let us know in the comments below. But there's not that many. There's no oversaturation when it comes to a good depiction of like racing on film. And this movie does that super well. It is also coming with the tagline of based on a true event. Now here is where the biggest discrepancy kind of comes in, and where they take a bit of freedom of retelling the story. And I think to talk about that specifically, we do have to talk about spoilers. So you have been warned right now. But there's actually like a really big difference where the story goes. There's a big crash that happens. I think about not 2/3 into the movie. I think like halfway through the movie, probably in like the second race or the third race, as he does, where he crashes in Nuremberg into an accident that actually injures people and kills one person. And the way the movie depicts that, it uses it as like a thing to him to grow out of his like fears and his anxiety and like the stuff that's holding him back. And the conclusion, it actually leads to the conclusion of the 24-hour race in Le Mans, right? The way this actually happened in real life is the other way around. He did the Le Mans race first, where he got the third place podium for Nissan, and then 2 years after, there was the crash that fatally injured someone. What do you think about that? Like the way that this story is picking and choosing the timeline of stuff that happened in real life?
Well, this is not a documentary.
No.
This is, after all, telling a story, and things in real life don't often happen in the order that would be most dramatic. So I understand why they would have to move it around from a storytelling perspective. So I don't care. Again, this is based on a true story. This is not the true story. Because that's what this film is. It's telling his story, but not in the same light. You know, I'm sure his dad wasn't as it's just a video game. It's just a video game. That I'm sure that conversation didn't go down as cringely as it did in the film. But yeah, I don't mind them moving around timeline aspects like that.
Yeah, I think I'm just like kind of opposed to the line of based on true events on a true story, because it tries to sell you on, hey, this is a grounded, like, realistic story, and it's just like, well, just tell me a story, it's fine, like where you were influenced. So I don't really care either. I just don't like that tag just generally for the marketing of movies. But yeah, I think it's a pretty solid one. You also had the real Jan, or as you call him, Yep, or Jeb. I think that was one of
Jeb.
the people who did like Minecraft. He was called Jeb. Anyways, he was also a stunt double in the movie as well, right, for the actual racer. When it comes to the performances, what do you think? Is this like good, bad, somewhere in between?
It's okay. Performances wise, I don't have any notes to say other than David Harbour carries the show. Where was Orlando Bloom? Archie is fine. The rest of the cast is okay. It's honestly not a film for acting.
No,
It's a film about the street and the cars and racing.
It's not a film about like family, although there are cars and people.
I've had better emotion in a Fast and Furious movie, so like, yeah, I've had better acting in Fast and Furious movies, so yeah, the film doesn't captivate me in that manner, which is what should captivate me, because it's a story about people and the underdog. That's the main thing, but the thing that captivates you is the racing. Like, because you said this earlier with like race car movies, there's not a lot of them. So this storytelling of showing a racing in this cinematic light is uncommon. So it's a new perspective that we don't really get to see.
Yeah, and it's so tied to the actual sport here that a lot of it is like grounded but still thrilling, because it is a really thrilling sport. And it is also a very cinematic sport in that as well. Like, I don't know what the last like soccer movie was, or like maybe a bit more on basketball.
It'll be Taika Waititi's new one.
It probably will, but I think that's going to lean more into comedy than the actual like sportsmanship and all of that. But there's not a ton of them. I think another really cinematic sport is like basketball. I think you can do that one quite well. But it just is really thrilling, and I think we talked about this off the show as well, that the parts of the film that are the most intriguing is like the second half of the film, where there's like multiple sequences where no one is really talking, or there's not, the focus is not on the acting or the script or the story that they're telling. It's just a race, and those were for sure the highlights of this film. And I just kind of wish they would have gotten to racing a bit sooner. I think the first act is really what drags this movie down a bit. It kind of needs to set up so we care for Jan, but so like quickly into it, he's just set up as the guy who's really, really good because he has a ton of experience. So there's not a lot of growth that he can do. He just needs to like translate his knowledge from the digital thing to the real thing, and he does that pretty much effortlessly, which doesn't like tell a really compelling story for that character. And you can see it come through in the way that they kind of need the love story that comes along, so they give him some sort of drama, because otherwise it would have been as slick as those breaks in that first like actual race that he lost. Because there's not a lot of grip to that character.
No, there really is no story arcs for any of these characters. They all kind of start and end in the same spot. They just have things that happen to them. Orlando Bloom's character, we open with, essentially. He's almost like our antagonist, because he doesn't want Yen to be the race car driver that they pick. So he acts as a force against Yen, and
Yeah.
also, I guess, against Jack as well. And the only thing that you have going for Jack is his previous career as a driver,
Mhm.
and his fears, I guess, or this thing that took him away from the sport.
Yeah.
And even still, it's not used that well to be his main, main character plot point. But they don't have any of that.
Yeah, because he
The
doesn't really
characters are
have
quite
any.
one-dimensional.
There's no pull that character actually has like the decision when he calls like the other guy to win, although Jan was in front in that like deciding race. They cut away, and then the decision is like as a surprise to the audience. Oh no, Jack actually got his way, or like they actually went with the real winner. Same goes in the final race where they just go like fuck it, and do like go away from the line because he knows the track better than everyone else. It's also he just like he buckles. He doesn't actually have like any say over the character, so he's a very like unimpactful villain. He doesn't really get to do much. And yeah, it's also like another deviation from the true story, because they in this make it out to be like the first round of people that Young got in. It actually was the third year that they were doing this. He was just the youngest that ended up winning and getting a spot. And I guess with the highlights that he got at that Le Mans race where they secured third place for Nissan was one of the highlights. And he's since been a really like successful Formula One driver. And yeah, has done like multiple races since then. I don't know if he's still like active, because I don't follow F1. That's another question maybe I should have asked at the start. Have you ever watched like F1 races?
Yeah, I've watched them in the past. Sometimes I put them on just as like background noise when I'm doing stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not an active viewer, active watcher, but I enjoy the sport enough to follow it here and there.
Yeah, I think.
What can I say? I like car. I like car.
I like car.
I go broom. I go yay.
I don't really like cars, so like for me is a bit of a tougher sell to get there. But
I thought you didn't like cars too.
I also don't like Cars 1 and Car Singular. Really, I'm really not interested in that. But I think something that was really funny to me at the start was also I only realized later that his dad was a retired soccer player, right? Football player. I was like, oh yeah, they did say that. But to me, all that stuck was like what I wrote down is like shaking in my head. Dad wants him to be a FIFA player instead of like Gran Turismo. He wants him to go professional in FIFA.
You should be playing FIFA, not Gran Turismo. Yeah.
I think Dad doesn't really translate, but I'd watch that movie. That would actually be pretty funny. But yeah, is there
based on a true story?
Is there anything else that stood out to you on the film?
Look, the only like other negative thing that really pissed me off was all of the pausing during the races to explain where he was in first, fifth, seventh place, because that halts the momentum, baby.
But you gotta know in what place he is.
During a race, they're doing tracking shots with him with the number above his car. Why can't they just do that again?
That is a fair point. What bothered me a bit more is the constant product placement of like Sony stuff was outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
It was the funniest thing to me in this whole movie is that like soon after he crashed and killed someone, the gift that David Harbour gets is like a Sony music player. It's so incredibly out of touch in that moment.
MP3 player.
Yeah, it's like sad music, and like he gets that, and it's like, oh my god, this is making me.
You know the funny thing?
Cringe.
You know the funny thing?
Yeah.
He loaded his music onto it because David Harbour uses it to play music later on.
Right. Nice.
It's not even the music that Jack likes listening to. He's just like, here's a modern device to listen to music. Not that modern because streaming is a thing. I'm sure that Jack has a mobile phone, but he's decided to give him an MP3 player that was like 8 gigabytes in size of just his music, so he could play it later on.
Yeah, I think it's not as modern at that time because I think it is taking
Oh, good
place in
point. It is set
2011.
back. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it was like 12 years ago. But still, yeah, they would have some kind of phone. But there's more people.
You know the other thing that shat me? You know the other thing that really pissed me off?
Mhm.
The constant, like, Sony sounds that would, like, the pause sound.
Yeah. I thought that
God, it
that
was
was
annoying
bothering
me.
me more. Like it was also when they paused to give you like the placement. It was that Sony's. yeah. It was.
I was like,
the
stop!
placement. Yeah, they should have done like.
But no, I can't take away the film's like great racing hype and like excitement that it builds, because during the end where they did like the photo finish, there was a person who audibly like behind me, and I was like, oh, I guess people are engaged with it.
Yeah.
A little bit more than what I was. I thought again the racing was the best part, but
you know what would have
people
really
were actually engaged quite a bit.
You know what would have really sold it for me is at the end he wins and then it starts the next race and it's like another close one. It's a bunch of like montaged quick bits from the race, and then towards the end is like the final stretch where he needs to take over. It's like someone hits the pause button and you can see the actual game Gran Turismo and you zoom back, right? You zoom back and it's actually someone else steering Jan as a racer in the future of the next Gran Turismo game, and boom, the next generation. It's called Gran Turismo Next Generation. That's the next movie they're doing this franchise. So that's what I wanted as a post-credit scene. Yeah, they didn't deliver, so I'm a bit disappointed. But other than that, it reaches the podium of video game adaptations this year, I'd say. It's like, what do we have? We definitely have at the top The Last of Us. Then I think somewhere in there is a Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's all right. Twisted Metal wasn't too bad. But this probably, like in the movie, gets the third place as far as video game things this year.
I know we're casting as a video, but it's the least adapted from the video game.
Oh yeah, it shits so much on gamers as well. It's like, no, I'm not a gamer. I'm actually like an athlete.
Dude, it shits so hard on gamers.
Yeah, but I feel like the type of audience that plays Gran Turismo is the most normie. That's not like part of gaming culture. Like it's the type of guys who maybe play, I don't know, like FIFA or like some other sports game or maybe Call of Duty. But that's probably what they do. It's not like more niche. So
yeah.
The alienation there was probably a good call to make it more wide appealing. But yeah, I don't know. Gran Turismo is still going strong. That's pretty much all I have to say about it, I think. Yeah. So Lachlan, what's your rating for Gran Turismo?
I was pretty positive with it.
Yeah.
And the main reason I'm positive with it is that I did find the racing stuff very, very engaging. And I felt like I'm a fan of Neil Blomkamp's stuff, whether it's his actual features or whether it's his short stuff. A lot of his short stuff, which you can find on Netflix. You used to be able to find it on YouTube as well. I'm not sure if it's still there. But I really like his stuff like a heck of a lot. I noticed a number of the CG in this film wasn't perfect, but I feel like he's got a very small studio who does visual effects, and I think it's the same studio that does it for this film. If it is, then that's wicked, because I feel like this film is a film for the studios so that he can get funding to do his next one, because unfortunately with his previous two big features, the Chappie and Elysium, they weren't as big of a success as District 9. And I know that I think there's a District 10 planned, a sequel for District 10 planned.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if he did this so that he could secure funding for District 10.
Yeah.
Or whatever else he wants to do, because this definitely feels like one of those one for you, one for me movies that we've had in the past with other really big visual film tellers. Christopher Nolan's a great example. Who else? Spike Lee's a great example of filmmakers who have done one for you, one for me films. So I'd like to see this film succeed a little bit so that he could get a bit more money for his next film. So 3 out of 5. is me, because I actually had a decent time. The first half is a drag, but the second half definitely delivers.
I definitely agree with the sentiment and the rating as well. So it's a 3 out of 5 for me as well. Now, Lachlan, if you had to pair up Gran Turismo with another film, what would be your pick for the double feature?
Le Mans, one of the most hardcore races in the world. Sorry, I just dropped something. So, I've decided to pair it with Ford v Ferrari.
Okay.
Because that's another racing film
It
about
is.
Le Mans and was also really good for its race car sequences. But I feel like its character storytelling is a lot stronger. So I feel like this film could learn from its character development from Ford v Ferrari, and I feel like Ford v Ferrari could learn its visual elements from Gran Turismo.
I'd second that. I think that movie is pretty good. A movie where I like the rivalry between the two races even more is in Rush from Ron Howard. One of the few Ron Howard films that I'd say that I actually enjoy. Usually not the biggest fan of his filmmaking. Also, it's been a while since I've seen Rush, but I remember it being really good. So that's my recommendation for the double feature. Now, if you're looking just for other double features to do, I do want to give another shout out to William Friedkin. There's a bunch of films that are worthwhile on his in his filmography, like The Exorcist, that you've probably already seen, but also Killer Joe, Cruising, Sorcerer, Bug, The French Connection. There's a ton. He even did a remake of 12 Angry Men, I just see. I might need to check that out. I don't know if it's any good, but I mean, it's a great screenplay at the base of it. And he's a really engaging filmmaker, so go give his film a watch. But if you want to watch something new in theaters this week, then the movie we're going to cover next week is hopefully on your radar, the last outing other than Aquaman 2 in the DC catalog before it does get that reset with James Gunn is Blue Beetle. And the beetle is still blue. It's beetling, and we'll be talking about how much it beetles. Then we also got Strays, a adult skewered comedy with a bunch of famous actors voicing dogs or strays of all sorts of feline connection. I don't know. This looks really bad. I don't know if I'll. This doesn't even come out for me for the next 2 weeks, but I'll give it a watch at some point. And then in limited release in the States is Landscape with Invisible Hand. Really odd, quirky little drama with aliens and a young cast in there. Go give that a try if it's playing near you. But that's it for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go check out our Movie Jeopardy video that should be on the channel pretty soon. And yeah, let us know what your favorite racing game is. Is it maybe Gran Turismo or one of the Mario Kart games? I know for me, like, what would be your favorite like racing game? Would it be one of the Mario Karts or something else?
Favorite racing game, Crash Team Racing.
Is that actually good? I've never never played it. Is that a
I
Crash
loved it.
Bandicoot?
I got the remake. It was yeah, Crash Bandicoot. It was a lot of fun.
Right, yeah. I think I played the Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong Racing or whatever once. That one was pretty fun, but to me it probably would be. I don't know. I guess I'm a bit generic with the latest one, but the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is kind of fun, although the recent cups that they've done in the DLC is kind of bad. But the base game is pretty good. So that's it for this week, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's shift gears and talk about Gran Turismo.